Hey y'all, it's Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am coming to you with my goals for 2023. And this is very exciting because last year I essentially did not set any reading goals. And I personally think that was a great thing for me. I think it was really rejuvenating, and I think it really renewed my relationship, not only with reading, but with BookTube. So I'm really happy that I did that, and I think it's really set me up to set some really great goals this year. I think I'm going to keep it very much similar in that I want the goals that I set for myself to be manageable and to be achievable. And so really what I think I'm going to do, the main thing that I'm going to do is set these goals for the first 6 months of the year. And if they work for me, that's great. And I mean this specifically in terms of books that I want to read, themes for this year in terms of reading. I really want to set that for the first 6 months because I recognize that the last half of the year is never the same as the first half of the year. Interests change, and reading is just a whole lot more varied in the second half of the year because of readathons, Christmas, the holidays, things like that, where you just don't have as much time to read. So I think in the second half of the year, I really don't even want pressure of goals because I tend to ignore them anyway. So that's one of my main goals of the year is I'm really just going to set these for the first half. I'm going to set this to the end of June and we'll see how that goes. And I think these are really achievable. So really I'll be able to push them through to the end of the year, definitely. The main goal that I had last year that I'm carrying over to this year is to buy less books. I feel like I did so well on this in 2022. And I really think I can keep up the momentum in 2023. I just, in general, want to spend less. I feel like I want to do a little bit more traveling this year, and that doesn't even have to be like a big deal, just weekends here and there. I really want to spend time outside of the house. And so I really want to allocate time and money to that rather than to books. This year, it wasn't bad at all in terms of the books that I brought in, but I think in years past on BookTube, I have brought in more books than what I have read in the year. And that's not good to me. My ideal is always that the amount of books that leaves is more than the amount of books that comes in, but also that I am bringing in the equivalent of what I can read. And so a goal that goes hand in hand with this is to read books as they come in, when they come in. I am particularly bad about this, and that's why I think I just don't want to do something like a haul. Buying a book here and there, that's fine by me. That's not really what I'm talking about. I mean truly like you're hauling 25 books. And that's very rare for me anyway, but I really don't want to do that because some of those always wind up by the wayside. I really want books as they come in to go on and get read because it seems to me that that's the time that I'm the most excited about them. That's the time that I'm the most excited about a new book is right when I get it. And I feel like if it lingers on the shelf for a long amount of time, I might not get around to it. This is particularly true for me with Book of the Month. I really love Book of the Month as a subscription service. And there are so many of their books that I get to automatically. And so I do really well with that. But there are so many books from years past and from months past that I have not yet picked up. So I really want to go through those, and maybe I'll do a video about that if you're interested in it. But I really want to go through the things that I have from Book of the Month and see how many have been read versus how many are still on my TBR and evaluate whether I am still interested in them. A lot of times on Book of the Month, I'll take a chance on something that I might not would have otherwise. And a lot of that is due to my mood at the time, my mood when they drop the books. So we'll see. So my goal is ultimately as things come in to go on and read them, whether that's Book of the Month, whether that's a pre-order. I have a couple of pre-orders here in the first half of the year, and I have a couple of things that I have ordered. So I automatically want to go on and read them. And so I think maybe something that would help me there is to have truly a designated TBR shelf. This has always been hard for me to achieve because I unhaul a lot And so there are always going to be more books on my shelves that I haven't read than that I have. And so I think it would be very hard to actually achieve a true TBR shelf. But I personally think that would be really helpful to me because I very much don't know it's there if I can't see it. And so that leads me to like leaving stacks of books around my bedroom as they come in so that I know, hey, these are new. So technically these are TBR books. And I did that last year. And when I put those books away, I know that there are at least 10 books that I got for Christmas last year that I never read, that I've never even attempted to read, but I went on and put them on a shelf. And that to me almost indicates that they've been read or just in fact that I'll forget about them if they're on a certain shelf. And so in the interest of continuing on my bookshelf overhaul series, I'm going to look at my shelves and I really do think I'm going to get rid of a lot of stuff that I've read in the past in order to make way for that kind of ideal TBR shelf. I know a lot of booktubers have a TBR shelf. I know a lot of book readers have a TBR shelf, and they'll have an entire bookshelf just designated for stuff that they haven't read. And I have never had that. I feel like that would be a great level of organization, and I think it would be great for me personally. All of my books are spread out. Every shelf that I have has books that I've read and books that I haven't read. And so maybe if I tried to consolidate things and I really designated something the TBR shelf, that would help me, especially in terms of reading books as they come in, but also in terms of just reading my backlist TBR. That's one of the ultimate goals that you have when you say you don't want to haul, I think, is just that you want to read books that are already on your shelf because conceivably you're still excited about them. You were excited about them when you got them. And so that's one of my big goals, possibly my biggest goal, and it is one that I am carrying over from last year. Something else that I did last year, quite unintentionally, that I really enjoyed is that I read a lot of translated works. And it is something that truly brought me a lot of joy, and it always has. I really enjoy reading translated classics specifically, but I know I read more translated than I have in years past in 2022, which is really exciting and is something that I think was a high point for me in 2022 in terms of reading. So I really want to keep that up. I read things translated from Japanese, Korean. I read things translated from Italian, from French. I just had the time of my life with translated literature. And so I really want to keep that momentum up going into the new year. A lot of that, I think, is that my project for 2022 was reading books recommended by K-pop idols. And so a lot of the works that they recommended were either in Korean originally or Japanese originally, but they also tended to read a lot of translated fiction from Germany, from France, things like that. And so that really kept me on my toes. And it also forced me outside of my comfort zone, which is something else that I really want to keep up this year. I loved reading outside of my comfort zone in 2022. I found so many fantastic novels that way. I will say, if I'm looking at it objectively, I probably DNF'd far more than I finished in terms of reading outside of my comfort zone, but that's okay. I also found some of my favorites of the year by reading outside of my comfort zone. And so that taught me that sometimes it's good to step out of your comfort zone. Sometimes it's good to read something that you wouldn't normally. And so that's energy that I want to keep going into 2023, reading more translated works, and also just in general, stepping outside of my comfort zone. Your comfort zone is there for a reason. And I think probably objectively, if I look back at the books that I have rated 5 stars, particularly in 2022, a lot of them are books that I would have picked up anyway. A lot of them are books I would say are in genres that I typically read, but a lot of them are not. And so that was really exciting to me. One of the joys of 2022, alongside reading translated works, was reading outside of my comfort zone and finding new favorite books. So that is something that I definitely want to keep doing in 2023. This morning I was looking at my stats, my reading stats from Storygraph, and I love what Storygraph does in terms of stats. I don't feel like it's all that accurate because I haven't updated Storygraph very well. But one thing that it does is it tells you which authors you have read the most from this year. And so for me in 2022, I read the most from Herman Hesse, who was definitely my favorite discovery of the year. I read 3 books from him, and I think I also read 3 books from Stephanie Garber. And those are both my favorite authors of the year, both people that I'm really glad that I experimented with, that I tried out. Definitely my 2 favorite authors of 2022. And I had also read a couple from perennial favorites like Wilkie Collins. And so that really got me to thinking. I often find authors that I think I really like. I read 1, maybe 2 of their books and I say, okay, I really like them. I think they're going to be a favorite author for me, but I don't tend to just barrel through their works. I don't tend to just read them in a line the way that I did prior to BookTube. And a lot of that, I think, is just that I have changed as a reader as I've gotten older, and I'm less interested in staying in the same world with the same characters if it's a series, but I am also just in general not interested in staying with the same author and staying with the same writing style back to back to back. But I think it would be great for me to look back at years past, look back at books that I have rated 5 stars, and really focus this year on reading authors that I know I love, reading authors that I have given 5 stars before. I think I do very well at stepping out and trying new authors, particularly in the realm of new releases. I am very good about trying a debut author, trying somebody new to me, but I don't often go back and read from people that I know I love, which seems kind of strange to me. I think that might mean a better reading year, and I think it specifically means more of a chance for more 5-star books, or just in general, more books that I feel positively towards. That doesn't mean that I'm going to stop trying new authors at all, because that's a real joy to me. But I think I would also really enjoy reading people that I already have a positive relationship with and that I know I enjoy. And so that's definitely a goal for the first 6 months of this year. I would love to read from authors that I have already given a high rating to. But when I am not enjoying a book, I really want to be better about DNFing. Prior to BookTube, I was a DNF queen. I mean, I would just DNF a book 10 pages in, and I still sometimes do that, but I am less likely to say that I am DNFing something permanently now on BookTube than I was prior. I would know within 10 pages prior to BookTube, I'm not feeling this and I'm never coming back to it, DNF. And I would love to bring that energy back. I think a lot of me feels like if I DNF now, that I didn't give the book as much of a chance as I should have. And I don't really think that's accurate. I think you can sometimes know that an author's style is not for you and that a book is not for you. And so I really want to give myself permission to DNF more freely and to DNF at will. I still think I'm really good at DNFing. I still will DNF a book when I'm not enjoying it, but it always feels weird to talk about. There are so many people on BookTube and that I know in real life that just won't DNF a book. And so I think part of me wants to be one of those people, because I wonder, if I DNF a book, am I really putting down a gem? Is this a book that could have become a favorite? If I'm really interested in something, I'll come back to it. But there are so many books that I've DNF'd in the past year or so that I'm pretty sure I'll never come back to. And I just said, oh, this is for later. I'm not interested in this right now. No, Jenny, you're probably not interested in it, period. And so that's the kind of thing that I want to be more honest with myself about. And I want to give myself permission to do it. Just DNF at will and DNF frequently if you have to. One thing that I have debated about, but that I just don't know how I feel, is doing away with wrap-ups. That was initially one of my goals for this year. And it is something that I told myself back in June or July of 2022, is just that I didn't really feel like doing wrap-ups anymore. I wanted to move towards something like recent reads, just because I felt like I talk about a book in multiple places as I'm reading it. If I do a reading vlog, if it shows up in a recommendation video, and then to talk about it again at the end of the month in the wrap-up feels redundant to me. So that's just something that I said to myself halfway through the year. I think when it goes into 2023, I'm going to stop doing wrap-ups. But I am really torn on that, and I would love to know y'all's feelings on it down below, because personally, wrap-ups have functioned for me in years past, and particularly just in the year since being on BookTube. They have functioned for me almost like a reading journal, because there are always books that I didn't mention elsewhere that show up in wrap-ups. And I personally think, looking back at my channel, when I look back at old videos, wrap-ups are of the most value to me personally. They kind of tell me how I felt at a certain point in time, but they also really put the book in its time frame for me. And so it makes it easier for me to remember, hey, the first time that I read such and such was in March of 2020. But also when I look at the analytics, when I look at the numbers that wrap-ups get, it's pretty clear to me that there are some people that only watch a wrap-up. So I think they are still of value to people, and I think there may be more of value than recent reads. I don't even know why I would call it that, because in many ways I think a recent reads video would just be a wrap-up under a different name. I didn't really do many wrap-ups in the first half of 2022 because I was in a reading slump, but I kind of missed doing them, I think because it meant that I would have been reading, and reading a lot, reading enough to talk about. So I'm really torn on this. I think sometimes I feel pressured to do a wrap up at a certain time in the month, and that's probably what really gets me. That's probably more why I wanted to move away from it. But I also just feel like if I've talked about a book in a couple of other videos, do I need to talk about it again? But if wrap-ups are some of the only videos that you watch, if you're somebody who's not interested in a vlog, I think the wrap-up style is still of value to you. So I would love to know y'all's thoughts on that down below. For right now, I do think I'm going to keep wrap-ups in the mix. But that is just something that was a goal that came to mind about halfway through the year. And right now, I think I'm going to stick with wrap-ups, but we'll see how it goes. My Goodreads goal is going to be 50 books. That is what it was in 2022, and I think that's what it was for the past few years on Goodreads. 50 books just essentially means a book a week. I do think I'll hit that. In 2022, I read 85 books. In 2021, I think I read 120 books. So I'll definitely meet that, I feel, depending on the length of the books that I pick up. But I like 50 because if I do decide to pick up a longer book, I'm not as stressed about it. This year, I didn't really stay on Goodreads. When I got on Goodreads, I updated that I was reading something and I left. Or I updated that I finished a book and I left. So I didn't really get too much into the numbers game of it. But in years past, when I spent a lot of time on Goodreads, I really did not like the little clock ticker telling you, hey, you're 3 books behind schedule or you're 4 books behind schedule. I just didn't really like that. Because I didn't spend as much time on the app this year, I feel like it didn't really matter. So I don't think going into 2023 that I'm going to be spending a lot of time on Goodreads as a social media platform. So I'm just setting it at 50. I think that's a decent goal, and I think it's one that I can meet. A goal that I have and is not achievable, it's already not been achieved, it's already been a failure here on day one, is that I wanted to combine everything into one journal. I wanted everything that I do to be in one place. And that is most certainly not really going to happen. But I think in terms of BookTube and reading, it can happen. I have been all over the place in years past. A couple of years ago, I had a really great book journal that I loved and I used all the time. But then the next year, I got the same book journal. It just did not work for me as well. In 2022, I had a different book journal that I frankly did not use. And it was by design a book club journal for that book club that I quit running. And then I would track BookTube stuff in just my general planner, like my work planner. And so my decision this year was to break the work planner and the book planner apart. And so what I did is I went down the Hobonichi rabbit hole. I've used Hobonichis before. If you don't know what a Hobonichi is, it's a Japanese planner. And I have the Hobonichi cousin for everything else that I think is going to be not only a work planner, but also kind of a life planner. Also, in general, just going to be, I hope, a memory keeping place. A place where I can try to write down thoughts every day. I've really enjoyed looking back on planners in years past because I love a daily planner. It kind of forms the basis of a diary for me. And so I would really like to add more into that this year. but I got the Hobonichi Weekly for BookTube stuff. And I really think I'm going to like it. What they do is they'll have the week over here, and then you have a blank space over here that can be anything. And so this week is me tracking videos, when videos are going up, when I can film a video. And so I really like stuff like that. And then this other side to kind of plan out videos that I'm about to film. Really enjoying the format of this so far, because I don't feel like I need a daily planner for BookTube or anything like that. But then at the back, they have some blank pages here. And so I'm going to be tracking stuff for BookTube here in the back. I really am excited about, tracking which books come in. That's something that I really want to do. I also want to track books that I buy on Kindle. That is something that I have never tracked before, but I think will be very interesting. Kindle books tend to get lost in the ether for me a little bit. And so I think it'll be interesting to have a place where I have recorded physically what I have on my Kindle. And then the rest of this can be very open. It can just be filled in as I like, especially with video ideas. I really like having a place where I can form plans for the future, because something that I really like doing and something that I think works out well for me is when I plan in advance. In particular, in terms of readathons. Last year in 2022, I knew I was going to be out of town in October. And so I pre-filmed everything for Victober. And I actually read for Victober in the month prior, which I thought was pretty brilliant. And it allowed me to feel pretty put together, actually. And so I wasn't stressed about putting something up during the month. So particularly in terms of readathons, like Ancients-a-thon, Feb Regency, stuff like that, I want to be working ahead. And months and months in advance sometimes, I have ideas for videos. And I always think, I'll remember that. That's something that I'm going to remember. No way I'll forget that. Jenny, write it down, honey. I've learned that about myself. If I don't write it down, it doesn't exist. And so I think having one journal for all of my bookish things will work out well for me. This is not really going to be a place where I write reviews of books. In so many ways, that is why I think a typical reading journal or book journal has not really worked well for me in the past, is that I tend to use BookTube now as my reading journal. That is the place where I tend to form my thoughts. It's where I review. It's where I have discussions with people. And so I don't really feel the need to put things down twice. The only time that I would is when I think I'll probably forget something between now and when I review the book. That's when I write something down. And so I think this is really going to work well because it's portable. It is something that I can just use on the go when I'm reading, when I'm traveling, things like that. Then I can automatically have a place to write down thoughts or jot down ideas for videos. And so my goal to really combine everything, my initial goal was to put literally everything that I have in one journal. Bible journaling, just daily journaling, which I don't do, but I should. Food journaling, like tracking what you're eating, tracking your water and everything. I really initially wanted all of that to go in one journal and have a creative journal for everything else. Y'all, that's not happening. I'm a stationary queen. We can't take away all of the things that bring us joy in this world. For me, one of those things is a blank notebook. For me, one of those things is having 10 notebooks open with 10 different things going on. So I don't think everything will go into this one journal. It definitely won't. But to know that all of my bookish stuff is contained in one, that is the goal for me. And I think in the first 6 months of the year, it'll be a good trial run to see if this style of thing works for me or not. Something I didn't tell you that I think is really interesting that I'm going to track in this reading journal is they have like this little calendar at the front of a Hobonichi. This is one of the best things about them. And it tracks all of the days. So January, February, March, and then 1, 2, 30, 31. I am just going to track the days that I read. The ultimate goal with this is just going to be to highlight each day that I read. And so then I can look back at the end of the year and see whether or not I've actually been reading every day. That's a big goal for me, I actually will say, this year, is that I've noticed in 2022 when I tried to let reading take not more of a back seat, but I just didn't want to feel forced to read. I think it meant that there were many weeks that I didn't read at all. And that's also not something that I want because reading is very good for my mental health. So I definitely want to make a concerted effort to read at least a little bit every day in the new year. In terms of reading plans this year, I have a couple of themes that I really want to go with this year. One of them is in honor of the fact that I think in August, I will have been on BookTube for 5 years. And I just really wanted to do something that would celebrate that. And so I want to read books that y'all have recommended to me. And I have a list going all the time when somebody leaves me a recommendation in a comment. And sometimes people will send me recommendations on Instagram. That's really wonderful. And I think that's a fun project for the year because it will be varied. It will be very different in terms of genre, in terms of book length, everything like that. I think that's a really great open theme for the year. So that is something I am really excited about. I really want to kick off my year reading a book that's been recommended by y'all, and I think that I probably will. But I also enjoy theming my year around a very particular theme. And last year, it unintentionally became German literature of the 20th century. I don't know why, but I really loved that. And so this year, I really wanted to go back to something that I really truly loved, particularly when I was in university, and that is ancient classics. I really want to focus, particularly in this first 6 months, if this is all we're setting goals for, I want to focus on rereading and also reading new to me ancient classics, particularly from Rome. I'm really high on Rome right now. I'm always interested in Rome. There are so many ancient classics that I read for school that maybe now it's been a few years since I've read, and reading them now would almost be like reading them for the first time. So I really want to go back to classics that I haven't read in a very long time. There are also many ancient writers that I only read in part in school, but never read the complete works of, never read the complete text of whatever we were working on. And so there are so many gaps that I would like to be filled in, particularly with people like Livy or Plutarch, who we read in part for a class, but we didn't read to completion. And I really just want to revisit some old favorites. I really enjoy ancient poetry, and I had such a great time a couple of years ago rereading some ancient poetry. I just think that I'm really in the mood for that right now. This may change as the months go on, which is why I think reading y'all's recommendations is a great project to have go hand in hand with this, because I think that will always be fresh and new. But I feel comfortable setting this goal knowing that I have set it just for the first 6 months of the year, because definitely reading tastes are going to change and what I'm motivated to do is going to change. But right now, that is something that has been on the back of my mind for about the past 2 or 3 months. And so I think it's a great goal to set for the first 6 months of this year. Those are all of the goals right now that I have for 2023. I will definitely post another video with all of the ancient classics that I am looking forward to reading and some of the recommendations that y'all have given me. But these were my more general goals, and I think they are very achievable, and I think it's pretty smart to say that I just want to do this in the first 6 months of the year. I think that's probably what I'm capable of committing to. I'm a Sagittarius, we don't commit. I would love to know down below if you are setting goals for 2023, what they are. If our goals are similar at all, I would just love to hear from you down below. But that's going to be all from me today. I hope you're all having a great week. Happy reading. Goodbye.